This is Debbie Reynolds and Pamela Gupta, and this is the Cybersecurity and Data Privacy Fix, where we talk about topical information just amongst each other. So it's kind of, the privacy and the cybersecurity side of things. So Pamela and I were chatting, and actually I shared an article with her. Pamela just said, she read the article, but this article is from Vice, and the title is AI Can Guess Your Race Based on X-rays, and researchers don't know how. So the gist of the article is that researchers are using artificial intelligence to analyze X-ray images of patients, and the patients self-reported their race, and the AI was able to guess with a high level of accuracy the race of the individual. And the problem is that the researchers or the people who are looking at these algorithms can't pinpoint why or how the algorithm was able to ascertain this information. So, for some people, this is a parlor trick, right? Where they think, oh, it's cool, the AI can guess that or whatever. But I think it's not cool because obviously the AI is making some type of judgment or inference that isn't apparent to the people who are using it. And then the danger is that this information about patient may lead to kind of bias or discrimination amongst patients. So, for me, and I'm sure Pamela has lots to say, because she's our ethics and AI expert. But, humans create AI, right? So if we as humans can't tell what AI is doing, we have a huge problem, right? So AI is not sentient and it's not human, so it is created by something. So if we're implementing things that we don't know what it does, especially as it can impact, in this case, someone's health and well-being, that's a huge problem. What are your thoughts?
Oh God, where do I begin? Let me see. So as you know, this is something that is a foundational element of the affiliation that I created for Women in Cybersecurity group, which is a not-for-profit. And it's called Trusted AI Affiliate. It's a very hard problem to solve, which is how do you establish trust in technology in general, right? So if, for example, if you're using a system, like even a clock, right? You want to make sure it's accurate and you trust that it's going to tell you the right time. Standard software. If you don't have that trust, you're not going to use that. Now, when you go to an application, that becomes more complex. But when you go to an artificial intelligence system, it becomes logarithmically more complex. It is just not simple to say, how are these systems being trained? What is, for a large part, they are black boxes when you don't know what's especially when it comes to machine learning, for example, where you have neural networks, you can have multiple layers, you can have different types, and a lot depends on the data that you provide them and how you train, and there's not always a transparency. So that is one issue that is really hard, that makes it a very hard problem to solve. How do we know what these systems are actually producing? Do we trust them? So solving for trust in AI is a hard problem, but that doesn't mean we don't try, because as I was telling you tongue in cheek, I was making a joke of this in the beginning, right? This is what is the problem, right? We don't have any high impact systems, AI systems being rolled out, because we don't have these checks and balances in place to see what they're producing, how they're producing, right? And the answer is no. It's an emphatic no. We are rolling out systems. We have been building them out, and by we I mean a larger global community. So it's not particularly centered in one area, but they are these systems that are being rolled out. But that's where the global aspect ends, because there are some countries who are really placing a lot of focus on what is being built. Do you have at least a impact analysis done on what are the systems you're building? So the system we are talking about in this case is a health system that is relying on commercial prediction algorithms. And what they are talking about is that medical images, such as X-rays and CAT scans or CT scans, are allowing algorithms to figure out, to analyze and determine what the race of the person is, which has a lot of issues, because we are already, like Debbie, you said, we are showing bias in our, as humans, in our daily existence, in the way we conduct our business. But when you put that bias, or you don't have the ability to identify the bias in these hugely largely impact systems, which, by the way, we are building, but we're using for decision making, which makes it a problem, right? If you don't know how they're coming to a certain conclusion and what all they're able to detect, then we should not be using them for decision making. We can use these systems for decision assistance to see, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, but we need to have the right feedback loops. We need to have guardrails on how these systems are being built. And that doesn't mean we just throw in something retroactively. As a security professional, I'm so used to this landscape. We build first and then we go back and retrofit. We don't have that luxury. These are systems you can't go back and tweak, for example. This has to be done right. And I will talk about one talk I had done, which is a technologist view of what we need from regulations to make sure that we have the right checks and balances in place, because this is not an issue that technologists can solve. So I'll stop there.
That was a lot, Pamela.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. The thing that I have feared for many years, I think, is here, which is the abdication of responsibility, right? Where we're saying, we don't know how this algorithm works, yet you're still pushing it out and you're still having people use it for decision-making purposes, knowing that it's problematic. And maybe that is, partially because, I don't know, maybe the people who are not affected don't understand the impacts. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that would be the worst place to go, meaning thinking that it doesn't affect you. It doesn't matter who you are, right? If you look at the kinds of bias, and you can do a internet search, we have, as humans, it's a very large number. You cannot have a person who doesn't have a bias. So the kind of bias that can be built in doesn't stop at color, doesn't stop at race, doesn't stop on the sex, doesn't depend on, if you're male or female. And now in the world that we are in, where people in their emails, they're signing she, her, he, them, what. We're talking about bias that is not getting less, it's only expanding. And the room for that propensity to have bias is only expanding. So it would be the worst position to take, that this only affects blacks or whites or yellows or browns. That is only one small part of bias. So
yeah, I feel like
that, right. We have more on what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. I feel like in some ways, some people, not to pick on Tesla analogy, where the driver gets out of the driver's seat and they sit in the back seat and let the car drive. To me, I feel like that's where this conversation is going a bit with AI, where we're saying, someone's saying, okay, well, we don't understand how this AI came to this conclusion, yet we're going to continue to develop this tool. We're going to continue to use it for decision making.
Well, the thing is, there are there is really no aspect of our lives today that we are not looking at automation and AI systems. And just to play the devil's advocate, right? There is just so much value we have that we can get from AI. And I think as human beings, we cannot even begin to admire some of the value that they are already providing and can provide. But anything that has high impact, such as what they are providing already, is also has the reverse sign, the reverse side of it, the reverse side of the coin of risk and impact. So just to take some of the massive algorithmic failures we are already seeing evidence of is highly impactful. These are areas that it's affecting education. It's affecting who's hiring, who's getting hired, and what are they looking for that you may not even be aware of. So gone are the days where you sent a resume and they were they had filters, software for looking at certain just keywords, okay? Now, there is a lot of data that is being used, including things such as walking into an interview, for example, or even on Zoom, let's say, in the COVID world. And how much are you smiling? And even if you're smiling too much or laughing too much, that's a problem. So the kind of data that can affect your employment and what you will earn, it doesn't get more real than this, right? I mean, I'm not even talking about Amazon's failed machine learning algorithm for hiring, which was biased between men and women. That they fixed it. They stopped the project because they knew they couldn't tweak it, right? These systems are not something you can just go back and say, okay, I'll add in another module and that'll take care of it. No, these are highly impactful systems. So and my point is, they are already being rolled out, and bias is natural to human beings. So there are lots of different types of bias. So this affects all of us, and it's already being rolled out. If you don't remember anything, these are the two things that I would really like to stress again. These systems are being built, and they're being built without the right checks and balances, and nobody is immune to it. So,
yeah. So we're seeing over in Europe and other places where they have groups that are putting out papers and guidance about algorithms, right? And so we also have kind of groups in the US that are putting forth proposals or trying to educate people, like people in the legislature, about AI and AI harms. What are we missing here in the US about this conversation about AI?
well, so that I would really ask people to see the regulations bit I did on LinkedIn Live. Maybe we can put a link to that, Debbie, because to go into a lot of detail as to what's going on around, the world that I just mentioned. But I would say Europe does have a very, very robust guidance coming out, right? It will take a couple of years for them to ratify and get that in place. And this is time we don't have. So if you see what's happening in the US, where we are not even at the point where we have published a national kind of a framework and a guidance, for it to get to that point of even getting legislated is going to be a bit longer, right? So that's the problem. One thing that is good that US is doing is FTC has come out with what they will go after if they don't see the right thing in place, okay? For people claiming to do AI development and claiming to have a build process. If they are using AI, they have to be able to show that they are doing what they are saying they're doing, and they are not using data points that they've claimed that they are not using. So I'll give you an example. And it is in that talk I mentioned as well. But let me give you a specific example that I talked about in my talk for FTC. Okay. There is this company that the FTC actually went after for, excuse me, for not doing what they said they were doing. Okay, so this is a good example of how companies that they're holding companies to their feet to the fire. Okay, so basically what is FTC saying? They're saying, watch out for discriminatory outcomes, so show that you're taking tests for disparate impacts, for example. This is from their website. So anyone can look at what FTC's expectations are. Start with the right foundations. Don't exaggerate what your algorithms can do, and if they are fair. So they're saying, in other words, if you're making a claim that it's fair, then don't make it without having a premise for doing that. Okay, and be very clear on how you're using data. Okay, so I'll give you an example of where FTC has been showing that they are serious. Okay, they went after a company called Everbomb, and what Everbomb was saying that it's a photo storage service. Okay, and they're training its facial recognition systems with users' photos. So what they did was they're using facial recognition by default for majority of users and not allowing them to disable the feature. That's one. Number two, that there was inconsistency with the claims that facial recognition would be inactive unless there was an opt-in, unless people actively enabled it. And three, they were storing users' photos and videos indefinitely. And even though they were saying that if you wanted your pictures to be deleted, if you didn't want them to be stored, they would not store it. Okay, they would delete it. So these were the three things that FTC found that they were not doing. And now, here is what the problem is. FTC is requiring Everbomb to reverse its technological advances from the misconduct. Okay, so they said you must delete the facial recognition models and algorithms that they developed with biometric information from consumers who had not given their consent, okay, to having the information stored. This is massive impact. I don't know how the Everbomb is going to do it, because it's not your database that you go and delete, if you didn't have consent. These are systems that they use for training. So this is an AI system, and for them to be able to differentiate about who wants to go in and who wants to get the data deleted, it's impossible. So they would probably have to scratch most of their development and start it over. That would be the best case scenario. Okay.
Yeah.
And not to think about what kind of liability they might have if they don't do it, or even for what they have done. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I actually did a video about this. It's Ever Album, and yeah, they were. FTC did say they had to delete their algorithm. So I think, to me, the gap is that we don't have a systemic way to provide guidance to companies about these types of things, as opposed to, Every Album was kind of an extraordinary case, I believe.
Well, this will only increase. This is what FTC, the problem with the US is FTC doesn't have too much teeth now, because the Supreme Court had ruled that they are not able to impose fines over a certain limit, for example. As you know, that is a very powerful stick for most companies. They don't want to be in that business of paying fines or being found. So the problem is that, that's why look, I don't know if the overall population audience is even ready for a robust approach, but what that development, the framework I had developed based on experience with security issues, and realizing that AI systems need more than security and privacy when you build them. So what you need from the get-go is that AI tips model that I created, which is transparency, integrity, privacy, and security. And how you build that, even I found there were some things that I had in the approach, which goes beyond a checklist approach, which is some of the things that the EU framework talks about, which is not enough. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so I'm not saying this is a perfect model, but I'm saying this is a very strategic way of looking at, what we're talking about. You can't just do it through technologists cannot do it alone though, right? Debbie, this is really important that this is done in a holistic review and a holistic risk-based approach, which is my sweet spot, because you can't just look. I'll give you an example. Been having this issue with my nerves, right? I keep getting a shock, and it's really distracting. Okay, it throws me off, and I'm scared I'm going to get a shock. And when I'm driving, for example, won't be able to focus on my path properly. Become a big problem. So I went to my general physician, and they sent me to a specialist, an orthopedist, a hand surgeon, because this was a hand problem. They look at the hand. They look at the nerves in the hand. Okay. After that, they went to a different specialist, then another specialist. But what is the problem here? You go to specialists which only are specializing in their area, not looking at it holistically, right? You need someone, and I was telling my children, I said, you know what? I think I need to consult with God on this, because it's truly the creator who would know how everything works together, because this is not a piecemeal problem. And when we're talking about some systems like these AI systems, can't stress enough that you cannot look at it piecemeal. That's why I developed this framework. It's called AI Tips, Artificial Intelligence Tips, Transparency, Integrity, Privacy, Security. And like I said, when I talk about trust, I think a problem is a lot of people don't understand that trust is a more evolved form of having a system that has the outcomes you want it to have. It's really not just building it with security, not just building it for functionality, not with transparency. These are really, they have to come together, and it has to be actionable, because you can't throw it at a company like EverAlbum, for example. And thank you, I was calling them EverAlbum. You can't throw it at a company and expect them to know what to do. It has to be something, guidance that they can follow. Okay, when they're building, that is, I can't tell you how much time I'm spent creating that regulation stock, because that is not just what regulations should do. It's about what technology we can use, what is the way we should be building technology, what are the biases that can come in, how do we protect against that, and oh, by the way, this is what we need from regulations. So it's a very, very holistic approach.
I agree. Not, it's not a problem that can be solved by one group. So I think being able to collaborate, right, across groups, and bringing people with different skill sets to the table can really help this issue.
Yes, but I think we don't have too much time. I mean, really cannot be spinning our wheels as to who needs to be there in this conversation. I was just in an IEEE conference today, presentation today. And, we were talking about engineers need to be involved, and, the regulators don't have all the information they need, obviously, because that's not their main focus, right? It's not their core competency. So who all need to be involved? I'm not saying we put in a really slap shot, quick, I'm just putting the link for the talk. We don't need quick knee-jerk reactions, but if we're talking about innovation and encouraging innovation, which is what the US is going for, that we don't want to curtail innovation, then we really need to have a guided approach to building systems, AI properly from the start. So anyway, I think we got that.
Yeah. I think, so that's excellent guidance, excellent advice. Let's see how this plays out too. I want to see, obviously this is a problem that's going to come up even more and more as more AI moves into, the health space and also kind of the liberty space, like in terms of how people are being sentenced or how it's being used in a criminal justice system. So that transparency is really foundational. It's very key.
Yeah, I know. I talk about that in my blog as well, which is we have to be careful how we build this, but we can't say we're not going to use this. That's not a solution either.
I agree. So, well, thank you so much. This is great for us to be able to do this session. And I'm glad that we were able to touch on, AI, because I know this is something that you're really passionate about. And so, yeah, this is great. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.